For the sake of privacy, I won't be using my real name. Just call me Jack. I've been a park ranger for 12 years. Enough time to see the woods stripped bare by wildfire, tourists wander off the trail never to come back, and more than one altercation with bears. You develop a sort of rhythm eventually, a callus of routine. There's comfort in knowing what the next step usually looks like. But there's one night that tore that rhythm apart. One night that rewrote what I thought I knew. It still sits with me, not like a memory, more like a weight, a cold, wet chain I drag behind me. There are things that happen out there you don't report, not because you don't want to, but because no one would believe it if you did. It was late October, 4 days before Halloween, the kind of night where the cold doesn't sneak in. It stabs. The air had that razor edge that cuts at the inside of your nose. Dim frost glittered on pine needles, and even the wind sounded tired. I was on solo patrol along the North Ridge. No visitors that time of year, just winding trails, thick pine, and maybe a mountain lion if you were unlucky. The campsite I was assigned to check, Delta, hadn't been used in weeks, the kind of place that disappears under snow once November hits. I checked in before heading out. Dispatch, this is Jack, heading to Ridge Trail and Campsite Delta for a routine sweep. I'll check in hourly. Copy that, Jack, the voice crackled back. Check in every hour. Be safe. I signed off, clipped the radio to my chest, and started the hike in. I had my revolver on my hip, steel flashlight in hand, and a backup battery in my pocket. Standard gear, but that night it felt like a joke. About 40 minutes in, I caught movement just a flicker out of the corner of my eye. My boots crunched to a stop. I turned, swept the flashlight. Nothing. Trees. Shadows. The faint hiss of wind through high branches. I scanned a little longer. It wasn't rare to spot deer or the occasional cougar. Most of the time, they didn't want anything to do with you. I told myself that's what it was, and kept going. But something felt off. The deeper I moved into the forest, the quieter it got. Not just quiet, wrong. You don't notice background noise until it's gone. The buzz of insects, rustle of leaves, toots, chirps, distant cracking of underbrush. Gone. Just the sound of my breathing and the crunch of my boots. Even the wind had stopped. Then came the smell of death. Heavy, wet, thick in the back of my throat, like a carcass left to bake and then freeze. Over and over, I gagged and raised the flashlight toward the source. Just trees, dense pine and tangled brush, nothing obvious. Then, without warning, my radio emitted a sound of static, followed by me hearing a sound that still sits in my bones. Jack, Jack, to dispatch it mimicked with an inhuman flair. The voice was wrong. Not static, not distorted radio. It came out warped, low, guttural, like something speaking through a throat that wasn't made for it, like someone trying to imitate speech with no idea how it worked. I then stared at the radio. I hadn't touched it. I pressed the button slowly. Dispatch, this is Jack. Confirm last transmission. A pause. Then, negative, Jack, no transmission sent. You good? My skin prickled. I didn't answer right away. My eyes scanned the trees again, slower this time. My body had gone cold beneath my layers. Yeah. I lied. Thought I heard something. Continuing on. He kept walking, faster now. That was the first moment I felt a presence. Something watching. You learn to trust that instinct out here. It's the difference between making it home or not. The air felt heavier, like it was pressing down. Then I heard it again, closer now. No static, no distortion. Jack, to dispatch. It was trying, getting better, mimicking, not perfectly, but less broken this time. A few of the syllables landed, and the voice, it was mine. The blood drained from my face. I'd turned a full circle with the flashlight. Still nothing, but the smell was stronger now, and the silence thicker. It picked up speed. pushing toward the campsite. Every 20 feet, I looked over my shoulder. Every time, I expected something to be there. 10 minutes later, I hit the clearing. Campsite Delta. An overgrown fire pit, two collapsed logs, and a rusted beer box. Nobody had been here in a long time. I stepped into the center and turned slowly, my breath fogged in front of me. Then I heard something move just outside the tree line, a shuffle, a drag, like something pulling itself forward. I raised the light and swept the edge of the clearing. And froze. There it stood, tall, towering, limbs too long, with joints bending just slightly wrong. Its arms hung low, fingertips brushing its knees, ending in claws curved like sickles. Its skin, if you could call it that, was mottled, decayed. Patchy fur clung to its limbs in clumps, stained black and brown with filth. And over its shoulders, a deer's skull, ancient, yellowed, too large for any normal animal. The antlers crooked and smeared with what looked like dried blood. The skull didn't fit quite right. It wobbled slightly as it moved, like it wasn't attached, but worn. It didn't look at me. It was looking down at its chest, where it was gripping something. Human skin, torn, ragged, stitched in places with crude twine, and impaled in others with what looked to be sticks, some with leaves still attached. It stretched across the creature's chest, but didn't cover it fully. A huge gap remained over the sternum. The edges around that gap were raw, red, inflamed, like it kept trying to no avail to itch a mosquito bite into curing it. It pulled at the skin, tugged it tight. The flesh tore with a nasty rip, and the creature let out a low, gurgling growl, seemingly annoyed at this occurrence. Trying to get it to fit, I stared, paralyzed while simultaneously mesmerized. And that's when it looked up at me. The yellow eyes weren't eyes, they were glowing orbs, coal-like, lit from within. And then it spoke. Jack to dispatch. This time it was perfect. My voice, my cadence, my exact tone. It had learned. Time had slowed down in this altercation. Though within no more than a minute did it go from a crude voice impression of myself to seemingly hearing the exact match of my voice. I was perplexed. Eyes stumbled back, flashlight shaking. That's when I knew. That gap in the flesh, that godforsaken, mangled skin hanging, it was assembling something specific. That gap on its chest, it wasn't complete for a reason. It was simply getting ahead of itself, practicing its speech patterns to emulate how I sounded before it even got a hold of me. This was all a game in the name of its hunt. I was the end prize, not just in satiation of hunger, something more, something inherently evil. That look on its face. It didn't have to speak to make the gesture any more evident. I would be the last piece needed to secure the area correctly. Me being alive after was irrelevant to it. It needed my skin to finish. That's why it was repeating me, why it was watching, why it was luring me deep. It needed the rest of me to complete whatever it was becoming, and it was almost done. I ran aimlessly, no plan, no direction, just pure, blind panic. Branches slashed at my face. My flashlight beam jumped wild. Then it flickered. Once, twice, dead. Pitch black swallowed everything. No moon, just clouds, the cold and darkness. So thick I couldn't see my own hands. Behind me, movement almost sounded like large wings. They glide leaves rustling past from the momentum. Then, right behind me, Jack to dispatch. My voice, soft croon, inches from my ear. It screamed, yanked the revolver free, turned, and fired. Once, a complete miss, but illuminating my surroundings enough for me to see it encroaching. Fast. Second shot, bang. No idea where the bullet landed. Third shot. This hit looked to have struck its shoulder, proceeding to make it laugh as its claw came right for my head, arching downwards. This could have cleaved the back of my head. and back if not for my leg caught a branch at the base of a small cliff, unbeknownst to me. I tumbled down, fear ensuring I held the handle of my revolver without being dumb enough to have trigger finger. The bush mostly cushioned my fall after a brief moment of ragdolling down the small cliffside, clay and twigs being embedded in my uniform. I gathered myself quickly, blood pounding in my ears. The moon would slightly illuminate my surroundings, only to just as quickly be enveloped by the clouds again. I couldn't see it anywhere. This frightened me just as much as its presence. Then the smell returned, everywhere, like it was coating the inside of my mouth. I ran until my lungs gave out, until my legs felt like they'd crack. Eventually, through sheer dumb luck, I found a trailhead that leads to an old ranger station. After another 20 minutes, I managed to make it. Collapsing inside, I locked the door and dropped the bar across it. My fingers barely worked as I reached for the radio. Dispatch, this is Jack. I need a team. Possibly a wild animal encounter, perhaps a bear. North Ridge, near Delta. Coordinates sent. Copy that, Jack. Team en route. Are you injured? Negative. I wiped blood from my cheek. Just shaken. My voice shook at my last statement. I filed a report the next morning. Territorial mother bear activity. Strange sounds. Nothing unusual. Because if I'd written the truth, it'd have called it stress, hallucination. Maybe holding me off duty. Maybe worse. But I know what I saw. It's like staring at a flashlight and then closing your eyes. That imprint is still there. I know that thing wasn't finished, and it was looking at me to complete the job. I personally don't patrol alone anymore. Not after that. And I don't talk much on the radio, only when I have to. But sometimes, deep in the woods, I still catch a whiff of rot on the breeze. And sometimes when the wind dies, I hear something moving just beyond the light. Not walking, gliding like an owl flying overhead, waiting, stalking. And then, sometimes, I hear my own voice call out, soft and eager, from somewhere in the dark. Jack to dispatch. I tell myself it's in my head, not like I'm sticking around long enough to find out. Family camped near Ward Lake. The mother waited too long to report it. By the time she called us, she was hysterical, nearly incoherent. I rolled up with Bravo team, 4 of us total. Ramos, Knob Medic, Price, Communications, and Jackson Tracker, all seasoned, all aware that once the sun went down in Tongass, it became a different world, especially near the remote sectors untouched by trails. The forest had a reputation. Hunters shared horror stories by firesides, campers found torn apart, bodies missing internal organs, but showing no external injuries. Whole search parties walking back out days later, hollow-eyed and broken, unable to speak. The official line was always bear attacks, hypothermia, disorientation. The real advice was don't go too deep and don't go alone. We parked our truck where the trail thinned into wild brush, checked our gear twice, radios, flares, GPS, thermal scopes. We carried standard sidearms, but I insisted on shotguns too, full loads of buckshot. No risks tonight. The woods swallowed us whole the moment we stepped off the marked path. Towering Sitka spruce and hemlocks loomed like titans. Moss crept up trunks like green blood, draping down from the limbs. The air stank of wet decay and something sweeter, something cloying, spook. No human tracks. We pressed deeper. The forest didn't feel alive. It felt watchful. Trees twisted subtly, their silhouettes wrong. The canopy was thick, choking off what little moonlight there was. Even our flashlights seemed muted, like the darkness swallowed the beams. Price's radio hissed static. He tapped it, tried to hail dispatch, Only rhythmic clicking came through, like teeth clattering. Too much interference from the mountains, he mumbled, but his hand shook. 2 hours in, we found the first sign of the boy. A scrap of red jacket caught on a branch. Blood smeared across it, drying brown, maybe a day old. Too far reminiscent, scanning the oppressive dark around us. No way a 6-year-old got this deep so fast. The dog must have led him, Jackson insisted. But he didn't sound convinced. Compass readings were erratic. GPS showed us moving in impossible pattern circles when we walked straight. Ribbons tied to trees seemed to move. We chalked it up to exhaustion. Bad decision. We made camp on a ridge near Perseverance Lake. Small fire, alarms rigged with tin cans and a fishing line. At 0200 hours, it began. The child's cry, soft, distant, gurgling like it came through water. We bolted awake, weapons ready. It circled our camp. All is just beyond sight. It could be the kid, Ramos whispered. It ain't, Jackson said, voice tight. The alarms jingled once, in silence. We didn't sleep after that. At first light, we broke camp and moved fast. The boy might still be alive. Maybe near the banks of Coralana Lake, we found the dog, or what was left of it. A pile of wet fur and bone fragments, bloodless, like it had been drained. The ground around it was peppered with deep, narrow holes. Something burrowed. Price dry heaved. Ramos muttered prayers. Jackson spotted another piece of red fabric snagged on a tree, leading us deeper. The trees grew denser. We had to wedge sideways between trunks. Branches clawed at our arms and backs. We stumbled into a glade. Silent. No wind, no birds, no insects. Nothing. And then we saw it. 8 feet tall, broad-shouldered, skin stretched tight over a bony, two-human frame. No eyes, no nose, just a cavernous mouth splitting its head open, rimmed with broken glass teeth. It twitched in place, spasming like a glitching machine. At its feet, the boy, kneeling, head bowed. Alive, we thought. I stepped forward. The thing tilted its head unnaturally. Then it moved. One moment it was 20 feet away. The next it was on Price. It hit him so hard his neck broke instantly. He crumpled like a puppet with its strings cut. We opened fire. Shotguns roared, buckshot tearing into its flesh. But it barely reacted. Black ether oozed from the wounds, but it didn't slow. It let out a sound like hundreds of children screaming under a frozen lake. It grabbed Ramos before he could reload, lifted him high, squeezed. His body ruptured, spraying viscera across the glade. Jackson and I ran. We didn't speak, just ran. The forest blurred past. Branches tore at our faces. Shapes moved in the edges of our vision. Behind us, the thing followed, not walking, not flying, just appearing, closer each time we looked away. Jackson tripped on a root and went down hard. I skidded to a halt, turned back. The thing loomed over him. Jackson screamed. It wrapped its long fingers around his head. There was a wet pop, spray of dark matter. Only me knew. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsed against a gnarled spruce, gasping, silent. Then a whisper by my ear. Found you. I turned, ready to fight. It wasn't the thing. It was the boy, eyes black, square, and iris alike. Mouth stretching far too wide, filled with tiny serrated teeth. He grinned. Behind him, the thing waited. I raised my sidearm. Fired. The bullet hit the boy square in the forehead. He didn't fall. He laughed. The world buckled around me. The trees twisted into impossible shapes. The earth rippled like liquid. Then nothing. They found me 3 days later, naked, stumbling along the Tongass Highway south of Ketchikan, covered in blood that wasn't mine. I don't remember escape. They never found the boy. They sent them more teams. They never returned. They closed the sector, citing unstable terrain, board lake campsites abandoned, the trails grown over. Look, I know the truth. The thing is still out there. It wears faces now. My name is Willie Hargrove. I've worked search and rescue in the Great Smoky Mountains for almost a decade, long enough to know the woods here aren't just dangerous. They're old. They remember things. Most missing persons cases end one of two ways. Either you find them shivering under a log, or you don't find them at all. The mountains are merciless like that. When the call came in, a missing child on Deep Creek Trail, I figured it was another tragic accident. 7-year-old Maggie Ellis, last seen near the Fork Ridge trailhead around dusk. Her mother said she turned her back for half a minute to grab a camera from the car. When she looked again, Maggie was gone. She also said, and only once in a shaking whisper, that she thought she saw someone in the trees, something too tall, moving. We set up the search grid at dawn. The mist hung low and thick, swallowing sound. Radios were already patchy. The Smokies have always been bad for signals, but that morning felt worse. I was assigned the northern quadrant, rugged ground, dense laurel, and ancient black pines leaning like old men. 3 hours in, I found the first clue. The pink sock caught high in a branch, 6 feet off the ground, too high for Maggie to have left it herself. I logged it, bagged it, and pressed forward, a tight knot forming in my gut. The further I went, the stranger the forest became. The mist thickened unnaturally, shadows stretched too long. The normal sounds of the woods, birds, insects, water trickling, faded into a thick, suffocating silence. It felt like walking underwater. And then from somewhere ahead, I heard it. A child's laugh, thin, distant, swallowed almost immediately by the mist. I stopped dead. Maggie, I called, trying to keep my voice steady. No answer, only a soft rustle, like something large brushing past a branch. Then, from behind me, another laugh. I turned, flashlight beam cutting through the fog. Nothing. I pressed on, heart hammering against my ribs, every step heavier than the last. Sweat trickled down my back despite the cold. A few minutes later, I found more clothing, a small t-shirt, snagged in brambles. It was torn, but there was no blood, no signs of a struggle. It was like she had simply evaporated. My skin prickled. The air around me felt electric, not rotten, not dead, more like the moment before a lightning strike. My radio was useless. Only static answered when I tried to call in. I turned to head back toward the grid line, and that's when I heard her voice. Mister, help me. It was Maggie's voice. But something was wrong. The words were stretched, like someone unfamiliar with how to shape them. They spun in a slow circle, scanning. And then I saw something standing about 20 feet away. At first I thought it was a man. Tall, gaunt, draped in what looked like moss, bark and hot, 7 feet tall, if it was an inch. Where its face should have been, there was only a yawning black hollow, a hole that seemed to drink the light around it. It tilted its head sideways. Curious. Watch. The blackness widened, and Maggie's voice spilled out again. Please, Mr. I backed away slowly. The figure took a gliding step forward. I turned and ran, adrenaline drowning out all thought. Branches tore at my arms. Roots caught my boots. But I didn't stop until I broke through onto an old service road. I collapsed to my knees, gasping, the mist still pressing against my back like a living thing. Whatever it was, it hadn't followed. Not yet. That night, back at base camp, I said nothing. What could I say? Others had heard things too. Laughter, voices. But no one else had seen anything. Or at least, no one wanted to admit it. We pushed the search into a second night. Pete Wilcox, an ex-firefighter and solid guy, partnered up with me. We set camp by a fire road near where I'd seen the thing. Around 2 in the morning, we heard it again. Eagle laugh, not distant this time, close. Pete jerked awake, hand already on his flashlight. You hear that? He muttered. I nodded. We scanned the tree, And then we saw her, Maggie, or something wearing her shape, standing just beyond the firelight. Her eyes were too wide, her smile too slack. She tilted her head unnaturally, and a garbled giggle bubbled from her open mouth. "Help me, mister," she crooned. Pete backed away, face pale. "That ain't her," he whispered. "That ain't Maggie." Before we could move, she stepped back into the mist and was gone. We packed up and ran. We didn't stop until we were back at the trucks, breath steaming in the cold air. Neither of us said anything the whole way back. The official search ended on day 4. Too long, too cold, too many dangers in the wild. They wrote it off as a tragic accident, but I couldn't let it go. I started digging, asking old timers, looking into local history, anything that might explain what we had seen. That's when I met Tom. Tom was Cherokee, had worked the park longer than I'd been alive. When I asked about strange things in the Smokies, he didn't laugh. He just looked tired. "You won't find it in books," he said, "but it's there." "What is?" I asked. He hesitated, then whispered, "Silcado." I repeated the name. It felt wrong in my mouth. "Old one," Tom said. "Slant-eyed giant. Lord of the forest. Older than the Cherokee. Older than these hills." He told me Silcado wasn't just a hunter. It didn't kill for food. It bent the world around it. Made you see what you feared most. Drew you into places where the walls between now and then were thin. Places soaked in blood called to him, Tom said. Places where grief never settled. He warned me not to go back. I didn't listen. I returned alone. The forest was waiting. The mist swallowed me as soon as I crossed the tray line. Walked until I found it. A ring of ancient trees, gnarled and blackened. The air inside buzzed against my skin. The world shifted. Suddenly I wasn't in the forest anymore. I stood in the middle of a burning village. Cherokee longhouses ablaze, their thatched roofs collapsing. Men on horseback, colonial soldiers, rode down, fleeing women and children. Screams filled the air, thick with smoke and the sharp, metallic scent of blood. I stammered backward, disoriented. A young boy ran past me, blood streaming from a wound I couldn't see. I tried to move, tried to remind myself it wasn't real, but it felt real. The heat, the screams, the terror. I stumbled against something. I turned. Maggie, or a version of her. Her small face burned and blistered, tears cutting clean lines down soot-streaked cheeks. Behind her, through the smoke, came Silcoru, larger now, more solid, eyes like burning coals, slanted unnaturally. He wore the dead like a cloak. He pointed at me. The world jerked sideways. I was back in the forest, on my knees, sobbing. Those who search these woods at night still whisper about her. Sometimes hikers hear a child's voice calling from the mist. Sometimes they hear their own name, spoken in a voice they trust. They say the Smokies are haunted. They're wrong. Something much more evil is lurking out there. Something ancient,